There's a very specific kind of fear that hits harder than ghosts, serial killers, or haunted houses. It's the fear of turning your own front door in your own home with your own key and realizing safety is already over. That's the nightmare at the center of Freida McFadden's The Tenant. A man loses his job, rents out a room to stay afloat, and slowly discovers that the stranger sleeping upstairs may have brought something worse than luggage into the house. She brought a plan. But the genius of this story is that just when you think you know who the predator is, the floor gives way beneath you. Because in this house, the lock is not broken. It's being opened from the inside. The story starts with Blake Porter looking like the kind of guy who should be safe. He's a VP of marketing, engaged to Krista, and living in a Manhattan brownstone that feels like proof he made it. Then everything caves in. He gets fired, the money tightens, and the dream home turns into a bill he can barely look at. So Blake and Krista do something painfully ordinary. They rent out the spare room. That mundane decision is what makes the story work so well. This isn't somebody wandering into a cursed castle. This is a couple making a practical choice under pressure. And that pressure is exactly what lets danger walk straight through the front door. Then Whitney arrives. She's attractive, calm, seemingly low maintenance, and at first she feels like the answer to a financial problem. But McFadden doesn't make the horror obvious. She makes it domestic. Cereal disappears. Shower supplies vanish. There are disgusting kitchen smells, fruit flies, and weird thumping noises in the middle of the night. Blake's neighbors begin treating him differently, like something is already wrong with him. And that's where the book tightens the vice. The threat is never just that Whitney might be dangerous. It's that Blake is being isolated inside his own home, one strange incident at a time, until he starts sounding irrational, even when he's telling the truth. What makes this especially nasty is how personal the sabotage becomes. Blake finds lipstick on his shirt collar in Whitney's shade. Krista starts pulling away from him. Even the house aquarium becomes evidence when their goldfish dies and Blake winds up blamed for it. A fight with the neighbor, Mr. Zimmerly, makes things worse, and then Zimmerly turns up dead. At this point, the story is doing two things at once. On the surface, it looks like a classic bad tenant thriller. Underneath, it's eroding Blake's credibility so completely that by the time something truly horrifying happens, nobody is left to believe him. The house hasn't become noisy. It has become accusatory, and Blake is running out of room to defend himself. So Blake does what paranoid people in thrillers always do when nobody believes them. He starts digging. He traces Whitney's past and gets a warning so blunt it feels like a siren. Whitney Cross is dangerous. He learns about a high school boyfriend named Jordan Gallo who cheated on her and then watched his life fall apart before allegedly dying by suicide. Suddenly, Whitney doesn't feel like a manipulative renter anymore. She feels like a long-range destroyer of lives. Blake drives to her family home in New Jersey, expecting confirmation that he let a monster into the brownstone. And he does get confirmation that a monster is involved, just not the one he expected. Because in one of the book's best twists, Blake sees a family photograph and realizes the woman renting his room is not Whitney Cross at all. His fiancée is. Krista is the real Whitney. She buried that identity years ago, changed her name, and built a whole new life on top of it. The tenant in the room is Amanda Lenhart, an imposter using the Whitney Cross name to hide from her own problems. That reveal is where The Tenant stops being a story about a stranger invading a house and becomes a story about intimacy as camouflage. Blake thought danger entered the home with a suitcase. In reality, it was already sharing his bed, smiling across the kitchen table and asking how his day was. Then McFadden does the thing she does best. She reruns the entire story with the knife finally visible. Krista learns Blake cheated on her, and instead of leaving, grieving, or exploding in the obvious way, she constructs a private apocalypse. She manipulates Amanda into moving into the house. She wrecks Blake's life piece by piece. She kills Mr. Zimmerly. Other spoiler accounts tie her to the deaths of Blake's affair partner Stacy and her own accomplice Elijah as well. The noises, the smells, the humiliations, the social isolation, none of it was random. It was choreography. Krista doesn't just want Blake heartbroken. She wants him discredited, cornered, terrified, and ready to die in a house that will testify against him. This wasn't a bad rental agreement. It was a guided demolition. The climax is pure domestic nightmare. Blake returns from New Jersey already poisoned by Krista's slow kill plan, weak and barely functioning. Inside the brownstone, Krista has already stabbed Amanda. She expects Amanda to die, expects Blake to collapse, and expects the wreckage to tell a story that leaves her clean, but the story refuses to end where she wants it to. Amanda survives just long enough to rise and drive a knife into Krista's back. Blake watches the woman he loved bleed out, while finally understanding the scale of what she did to him. And the really twisted part is that even then, the book does not give him clean emotional closure. He's horrified, betrayed, and still loves her. That's the contamination this novel keeps pushing. Once someone has lived inside your life long enough, even truth doesn't arrive pure. If the novel ended there, it would already be a vicious thriller. But The Tenant has one final turn of the screw. Months later, Blake recovers. He and Amanda are linked by shared trauma, and it almost feels like the story is allowing a little oxygen back into the room. Then the epilogue ruins that comfort. Amanda admits she was never innocent either. She stole Whitney's identity because of gambling debts. And Jordan Gallo's uncle, Frank Gallo, offered to wipe those debts clean if she killed the woman responsible for Jordan's death. So Amanda's last-minute rescue was never some heroic act of survival. It was a contract fulfillment that just happened to align with Blake's escape. In a lesser book, the ending would sort the characters into victim, villain, and savior. In this one, everybody leaves fingerprints on the crime scene. That's why The Tenant works best, not as a straightforward synopsis, but as a story about contaminated trust. The home is contaminated. Identity is contaminated. Sympathy is contaminated. Even the title is slipperier than it looks, because the book keeps asking who the real tenant was. Amanda, the outsider renting the room? Krista, the woman inhabiting a stolen name? Or Blake himself, drifting through a house he thought he owned, but never truly understood? That's the nightmare McFadden is selling. Not that a stranger might enter your home, but that by the time you know which stranger to fear, the war for the house is already over. If a stranger moved into your home today, how long would it take you to realize they were digging through your secrets? And more importantly, after hearing this ending, who do you think the real intruder was in The Tenant? Let me know in the comments. If you want more high-retention thriller breakdowns like this one, like the video, subscribe to Chapters and Concepts, and I'll see you in the next story where the safest place in the